So now that we're in this, I know a lot of people are asking, when are we gonna get out? So if you're interested in learning about the part 2 of the astrology of the coronavirus pandemic, and especially what to expect socially and economically in our day-to-day lives in the upcoming near future of 2020, make sure that you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you are always up to date with what the stars have in store for you. Hi, I'm Maren. I am a professional astrologer, current philosophy student, and witch. I combine traditional Hellenistic astrological techniques with modern psychological counseling dynamics in order to provide grounded spiritual guidance with my astrology. So before we get started, a little plug for my upcoming Astrology Academy. This is a course led live by me starting at the end of May. If you are interested in joining and taking a deep dive into the ins and outs of astrology to have a firm basis to change your life, whether you want to apply it to your day-to-day world or whether you want to continue on with this professionally, this is the perfect one-stop shop comprehensive course to take you from zero to hero in astrology. It is the only time this will ever be offered live with me, because after this it will be recorded and packaged up. So if you are interested, leave your email at the link below and we will reach out and continue on speaking if you are the correct fit for this amazing course. So if you're new here, make sure that you watch my first astrology of the coronavirus video so you understand like how we've gotten here in the astrology up to date. This video is really going to touch on the mundane transits, not only pertaining to health, but also to the social implications of the pandemic and the economic consequences as well as they play out, especially in terms of the US, because I am located here and particularly interested in what's going down. So the first transit I'm looking at here coming up is Jupiter conjoining Pluto exactly on April 4th. I'm filming this video a few days before that, so I'm not sure if this will go up after that transit already happens, but either way, that's an important day, and this aspect is going to stay very, very close for the few weeks to come. So Jupiter is the expansive force of growth, of both progressive growth and cancerous growth. It represents this abundance, and Pluto can represent a transformative crisis traumatic quality where it inverts things. It makes the very small very big, making something like a virus that's microscopic into a huge ordeal. So I think that this April 4th date around this time, because it doesn't actually have to be that exact date, but that whole first week of April that is now, is the high point of the expansion of the panic around the virus. I think that this is one of the final times that this is so new, that the adrenaline is still high. And I think after now, there will be a type of fatigue of acceptance and more embodiment around the fact that's going on. So this high point of Jupiter-Pluto is the high point, not necessarily of the spread of the virus itself, but of the collective panic or fear around this necessarily. So likely the curve has a ways to peak before it can die down, at least here in New York, where it is apocalyptic and where there is really no stopping it currently. But Jupiter-Pluto, compounding right now, is representing the high point of the viral crisis, or the panic viral crisis right now. And this is right on the USA's natal Pluto in the second house of finances. So the US is going through its Pluto return right now. Pluto is returning in the sky to where it was at the time of the US's birth, at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And this is the explosion of economic destruction that is obviously happening right now. You know me, I'm not going to sugarcoat in this video. I'm neither going to fearmonger or sugarcoat. I just kind of tell it how it is. So it'll probably get even more intense in this area coming up, but this is the awareness of the economic explosion and implosion happening. And then on April 25th, we have Pluto stationing retrograde at 24 degrees of Capricorn. So Pluto going retrograde, I believe, is going to indicate the residing of the first initial wave of cases, not necessarily in the whole US, but for these major cities such as New York, such as the places in California and in Seattle. I think that the end of April is going to coincide with the beginnings of seeing the numbers no longer rising, because with Pluto stationing retrograde, the explosion of viral matter is probably going to be subsiding for a limited time being. And I say limited because not only I as an astrologer, but epidemiologists likely do believe there will be a second wave, and I'll get more on that to come. So with Pluto dealing with the microscopic that can become catastrophic, I actually like that, it kind of rhymes. And the retrograde period, I think coinciding with this first wave dying down, I think that this will subside alongside some of, or I think that this will coincide alongside some of the subsiding, there's a lot of rhyming going on today, in the major cities that right now are going through the thick of it. And then on May 11th, Saturn is stationing retrograde at 1 degree of Aquarius, which I don't think is hitting anything major regarding the virus necessarily, but I think collectively we might not be as alarmed by the isolation, and it's not that the restrictions are gone by any means or that we're encouraged to it all go out by the beginning of May, but I think that we might be more collectively chill as the planet of limitations, Saturn, and the planet of boundaries, this planet of foundational constriction, dips out of the sign of collective gathering Aquarius. I think that this is indicating maybe less restriction when we're at a point where there can't really be anything added on necessarily for each of our collective situations. So then there are two next important transits coinciding in the beginning of summer and of spring here. So Venus goes retrograde on May 13th until June 25th in the sign of Gemini. And with this Venus retrograde happening in the sign of Gemini, I see this as a rethinking of social dynamics. So this might be a time of collectively really subtly rethinking relationships in the midst of having been isolated for a substantial amount of time. And a lot of people might be reconsidering the way in which they're romantically involved with others if they feel that they've regressed in their connection during this time. Or maybe they're realizing, a lot of us, that the way in which we're interacting with the world, because it's more like a new normal, it's not a temporary normal, needs to change, and we're rethinking the way that we connect virtually with this Venus retrograde happening in the beginning of summer. It can also indicate a loosening up of some of the quarantine guidelines in certain parts of the US, because I believe that as the temperatures heat up in certain cities that aren't super condensed or hardly hit, might be loosened up, because Venus representing groups, or representing, people and harmony and whatnot going retrograde, could indicate a rethinking of some of the restrictions in socializing Gemini that have been happening. I don't by any means suggest that this will be a free-for-all in the really majorly hit cities. I simply think that in some areas of the US, it might no longer be substantially pertaining to keep up with these guidelines necessarily. This is right on the US's natal Mars, which is, since the US is a day chart, the malefic out of sect, in the 7th house of the other person or the other body. So I think that this represents issues with the others in the world, like other countries, if Donald Trump keeps calling this the China virus. With it close to the transiting North Node as well, that's an inflating, exaggerating embodiment of energy. You can watch my full video here on the North and South nodes of the moon. I will actually link the full series on my nodes of the moon down below, because as you'll see coming up, we have a lot of eclipses to talk about in this sign, or in this next year to come as well. So I think that this could be a lot of backtracking around the foreign relations that are also happening alongside some of the public backtracking. Just a lot of rethinking people-oriented dynamics, not only in the socializing of the US, but in the US socializing politically with other countries. The second transit that's now important for May is Jupiter stationing retrograde at 27 degrees of Capricorn on May 14th. So this is exactly conjunct the USA's natal Pluto in the 2nd house of finances. And I think that this is a really clear symbol of the economic shattering, leading to a huge revision of some sort. sort. This might be a more ongoing stimulus announced or a more ongoing economic plot to be announced, because Jupiter is expanding the crisis of finances present in the US charts to begin with. So huge measures around rethinking the economy from this point forward are happening as Jupiter stations retrograde right on top of that Pluto in the second house there. And this is not even summer yet. This is just this next few weeks in spring that I think that this is the first oh shit moment. So let me know down below any comments or anything you think that I've missed around what's coming up really soon, more in the current timeline, or anything that you think will be happening based on your own information. Maybe you have some medical or healthcare information that can add context to this. I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. So then this summer, moving on, there is a Mercury retrograde happening from June 18th to July 12th in Leo and Cancer. And this Mercury retrograde is not in and of itself an indication of something specifically happening around the coronavirus pandemic necessarily, or social isolation. It's more just annoying, and it's in the middle of eclipse season, which I think is going to illuminate specifically the cultural and socioeconomic things this summer, as maybe the warmer temperatures coincide with a viral die down for a temporary period. So there's an eclipse happening right on the US ascendant on June 5th. There's a lunar eclipse full moon at 15 degrees of Sagittarius, which is right on the US ascendant, and with the ascendant generally coinciding with the physical body or with the identity, and this being for the US. This is unpredictable, fated, substantially erratic energy around the US as a body and as a public unit. With the South Node K2 right on the US ascendant, that's a very life-sucking and Harry Potter Dementor-like quality right there. So this very well may be indicating some sort of rock bottom coming up. There is then a solar eclipse on June 21st, a new moon at 0 degrees of Cancer, which is near the US sun and very near the US's Venus and Jupiter. So this is highlighting a new beginning around shared finances that will probably play out for about the next 6 months, that I think might be a new chapter around money collectively or money borrowing for the US that's not as intense as the one prior. But the month keeps going. So on the 30th of June, Jupiter reconjoins Pluto, and they're both retrograde. So with them moving so reversed and reuniting in such a vulnerable pattern, I see the end of June as a clear financial rock bottom, a clear rock bottom not only of money, but of resources, and possibly of medical supplies as well, or of a severe realization of the losses with Jupiter, Pluto, expansion of crisis, retrograde going back. I think that if the curve has hit its peak, this would be probably around the time when we see fatalities, not only of people, but of businesses, but of financial institutions, of multiple things that represent life and creativity in the public eye. On July 5th, we then have a lunar eclipse, a full moon at 13 degrees of Capricorn, which is exactly by degree on the US's sun. So this is just insane, nothing short of insane. With this being legitimately financially insane right here, there's no way to get around this, that this is illuminating another break of a chapter coming to a high close around the emphasis of shared finances and intertangled money in the US. This could be a huge breakdown of, I'm not going to pretend to have any expertise around the Federal Reserve or the way that the US collects taxes or whatnot. I'm not going to at all make claims. But with shared financial resources of borrowed money, of money that the US shares with its people, This is a breakdown and shared supercharge for what has come for the rest of the year, because lunar eclipses are full moons, which are peak times, and it's a culmination for the prior 6 months. So with it happening in July, like this is literally what's happening right now for us, coming to a chapter ending around it in July. And the end of July, July 27th, actually has a glimmer of hope with Jupiter sextile to Neptune. This is a year-long transit of the expansion of cancerous growth, frankly, having the possibility to get us closer to an opportunity for idealizing dreams, actually. And I think that individually we can all see that happening as what's really valuable to us becomes more true and more divine in a certain way. By the end of July, Venus will be direct, and this cataclysmic upheaval seems to be peaking in June to early July. So even though the virus will probably have its peak more in spring, this is kind of like the glimmer of hope is finally showing through, as both the medical and the socioeconomic peaks have hit, and now we understand what is important to focus on moving forward. Then on September 12th, Jupiter stations direct at 17 degrees of Capricorn, and with Jupiter growth stationing direct in Capricorn, a sign around limitations and the sign of Jupiter's fall, this could frankly indicate a second wave happening. And with the temperatures getting cooler in fall and winter, I think that this is backed up by common sense as well. So it's not necessarily a worst case scenario or a situation coming out of the blue. Like, this is understood, and it probably will arise around fall, maybe the September to October range of there being a second wave. But I think that with Jupiter now retracing its retrograde steps, there are, I mean, depends if we have our footing together in the medical world or not, but there are more awareness, at least, of the resources necessary to be put around this second wave. There's another Jupiter-Neptune sextile on October 12th, which I think is connecting us again with more optimism around things coming more to clarity, not necessarily in terms of it's all good and we're done with this, but there's more clarity of achieving goals by that end. Then as the year ends out, there is another round of eclipses. So on November 30th, there's a full moon at 8 degrees of Gemini, a lunar eclipse. On December 14th, there's a new moon, a total solar eclipse at 23 degrees of Sagittarius. So with these happening around the US ascendant, but not super close in the first house, 7th house axis of the US, I think this is concluding the implementation of the financial structures that were really frankly decided upon this summer, now being an ingrained part of the US as this new normal. So the end of the year has the major changes, even more so in December. On December 19th, Jupiter will enter Aquarius, and on December 21st, Jupiter will conjoin Saturn at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So I talk about this more in my Saturn and Aquarius video here that you can watch to fully understand more of the underlying dynamics of this time. But this is an implementation of a new era of air signs, and this is a serious paradigm shift into more progressive, serious, and interconnected ways of living. This is more of kind of like a paradigm becoming very clear, and it's very close to the US's South Node in the 3rd house, also very close, though out of sign, to the natal Pluto in the 2nd. So it's a solidification of the new financial structures which are connecting us. It's an implementation and a release of that which cannot be upheld in this new lighter yet more seriously sustainable structure for society. And I do not see this as a happy ending as much as I see it as a clear new beginning of a paradigm shift that will be an obvious age of air signs. And I think this will also mark a tangible new reality around socializing. Probably the distancing restrictions, even if they aren't really enforced nearly to the manner that they are now, they will be a new awareness around the distancing physically that connects us socially. So it seems like the social situation will be continuing on in the restrictive measures until summertime, when things may slightly or gradually loosen in a kind of natural, intuitive sense, when there will probably be a resurgence, though not as surprising, nearing the fall. So what does seem to be the major driver of sudden change of the US economic force seems to be happening in summertime, and that seems to be more reflective of the collective identity as a whole. And the virus, according to this astrology, seems to peak around April, May, which is right in line with the epidemiologist projections, while the economy seems to have its maximum fatalities around the June-July period, and to be more of a concurrent crisis, whereas the virus does seem to have this first wave and then a fall-oriented second wave. So 2020 is a hell of a ride, and I hope that this video came across as informative, not as sugarcoating, not as fear-mongering, or like either way. I just hope that this came across as clear as to what we can expect, and I'm hoping to just present these archetypal energies as useful so that we can all understand, because with awareness can come space to breathe around this. So if you enjoyed this and you would like to check out my private consultations down below, check that out. Also check out my website and company Rashi. Rashi is an online platform connecting spiritual practitioners with their ideal clients. So for example, if you are a virtual Reiki healer, a virtual yoga teacher, or I should stop saying virtual because we're all doing business online nowadays. If you are in this spiritual sphere and you want to post your services online, it's basically like Yelp. People will search and they can find you. That is down below. Also, check out the Astrology Academy if you are interested in joining, if you are curious if this is a good time for you to learn about this language of the cosmos to better your life and increase your philosophical bandwidth. Check that out down below. Otherwise, like, subscribe, leave a comment around any thoughts, anything that you would like to share, your personal story or your chart during this time. I would love to hear it. Sending so much love and so much safety and health, and I will see you in the next video.
But there is one thing you're all forgetting, but endless morning will turn to night, and when